Man, I stopped paying attention to this game. Holy shit. Fucking when did the Bruins score 2 more goals? I'm Will Hedrick.
And I'm Jordan Schaffer.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps, a book club podcast.
Finale Day... I forgot the name of the book. The Descendants of the Crane. Finale Day Descendants of the... I can't do it.
You almost had it.
It was... Dude, I liked it. I loved the book. It was really, like... I don't know. That was kind of weird. It kept me interested the whole time. I thought, honestly, like, there were some points just because it was literally, like, reading, and if I'm laying down or anything, like, I'll doze off. But,
this is the first book that you've read in a long time, right?
Good point. Since we did Aragon,
never...
but, like...
Oh, yeah, you read that one, too. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean,
before that was what, Neverwhere?
And that was only, like, the last section of it because, you know, I wasn't listening to it because I was flying in a plane, I think.
Oh.
But, yeah, I mean, I haven't, like, you know, sat down and read, so figuring out the time allotment to sit down and read has been a bit of a challenge. I've been, you know, behind every week, you know, just kind of coming here and reading a little bit, you know, finishing it up, but
right. Doing
that has been, you know, a bit of a learning curve, and it's been cool reading. I haven't... for some reason I thought I was going to be like, I know this sounds silly, but like bad at it. Like I just thought I'd be like really slow.
Yeah, I got you.
I'd misread words or whatever just because like I'm used to hearing them, not necessarily seeing them. Mm-hmm. And then, you know. So
it's a totally different activity.
Yeah, and then also like I'm a little ADD, so I figured like, you know, it not only would I be slow, but I'd get distracted or I wouldn't be able to focus on the one thing. And it's been cool. You know, you just kind of, you really do have to like, you can't worry about anything but like what you're doing. So it's quite a bit more like removed from everything else, which is it's a good practice in its own, and I think I'm probably going to do it with the next book too. But I just got to get better about, you know, my own time scale and figuring out so that we're good.
Yeah, but, yeah, it's like things that we've talked about on the show before. Mm-hmm. Being able to appreciate the focus of something that you're doing, or the way, or you know, what I take out of it is the peacefulness of it being the only thing that you're doing.
Right.
For the same reason that I enjoy hunting and fishing. Mm-hmm. And usually, unless I'm pressed for time, I really enjoy cleaning.
Yeah.
Because you're just doing the one thing. Maybe you're listening to music or a podcast or something like that in the background. But you've just got the one thing going on. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Cleaning a little bit less so. But definitely like hunting and fishing, I'm never listening to anything while I'm doing that. Certainly not while I'm hunting because, you know, you can't make noise. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoy it just being still and quiet, you know, for once.
Yeah.
Because so often it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly in the city, even, you know, at 3 a.m. here on the street, people are hauling ass down the road. You know, I live on a corner lot and one of the streets is the main thoroughfare of my neighborhood. And this is a major city where people are up potentially at all hours of the night doing different jobs or going out or whatever. So people are constantly driving through and they haul ass down this road.
Yeah.
So it's just it's almost never quiet.
Yeah, no, I could see it being peaceful. I think that's what I recently realized that I liked so much about anime. What made it so like immersive for me was just that you can't really do much else other than watch it.
Yeah, if you're watching the
Japanese.
Yeah, if you're watching the subs, you've got to be paying attention if you're going to catch it.
Exactly, yeah.
There's very few shows where I've been able to just mindlessly watch and be able to do something else. Mm-hmm. And it's usually a show that's got bad enough writing that I predicted what they were going to say, or is a show that I've already seen.
Yeah.
Like whenever I was going through Naruto again, I was just like, okay, well, I can have these filler episodes on in the background, and when something really cool is about to happen, I know it's going to happen, so I'll stop and watch the fight or whatever, you know, but I could get away with doing other things. But yes, yeah, exactly like you were saying, that's another good example because it forces you to just really pay attention to the one thing and, you know, really take it in as much as you can.
I think it's also kind of, like we were just saying, it's a different discipline altogether for like in the reading family, I guess, of the reading discipline. You know, it's a different section of it because it's, I don't know. I felt like it was a little bit more exhaustive. I don't know. I don't want to say it was harder than listening to it because listening to it, I still thought about it just as much, I'd say. But maybe it is for some reason just feels maybe a little bit.
I think the nature of reading is more involved than the nature of listening.
No, it's a good point. Yeah,
it's substantially less passive.
Yeah, very true. It's and so like just doing it with this book, it's made me want to start like reading other books again, and just like on the side too. So I've been reading a little bit of just of other things, not like anything serious or long, or I opened up this honeybee book and just like flipped to bee pollens because I wanted to know what it was. So I looked it up, and just little things like that. And I started reading this book about white-tailed deer, and that was interesting. And it was like a textbook though, so it was interesting for a little while.
Right.
And but yeah, I mean, it's cool. So it's been getting me back into, even though this podcast has been getting me back into reading in general, just doing a little bit more involved reading, I guess, it got me even further in. So that was cool. It's one thing I think I really learned, like, along with this book. That could be why I like it so much. It just got me back into, like, the immersiveness of reading. It was a fun story too. It wasn't, there were quite a few things that I didn't really see coming, I guess. And it didn't feel like she was writing in a way that was like trying to be too far-fetched. It's not like she was trying to do the crazy ending. It was some stuff that we kind of talked about, like Cyan kind of being potentially the, like we've spitballed it with him being the assassin, or the one that poisoned her dad. I never thought of him being Sooth, but
that's sort of, that did surprise me.
That was the one thing that I was like, that was a little interesting. But like everything else, we kind of, we predicted a little bit.
It makes sense and fits.
It does, yeah. And
that's the thing is that, like, generally speaking, I don't like epilogues like that, where it ends up just being a giant info dump and a reveal on a character that we didn't know as much about as they had part in the story. Because it turns out he's got a huge part in the story. Or much larger than we knew.
And it makes you sympathize with him a little bit too. It kind of gives you like his woes, and like, he's not just like... It
definitely, it reaffirms everything that we wanted to believe about him and that we believed about him. Because, or at least the way that I always saw him was that, we didn't know everything about him, obviously. He was very stoic, and he was more of like, a bookworm or somebody of that kind of personality. Didn't say a whole lot, but was really smart. But I felt like it was evident that he was loyal to Hesina and loved his family in his way or whatever.
It felt like it, yeah.
And then the fake betrayal happens. We don't know it's fake until the epilogue. The betrayal happens, and I'm like, even then, I was still like, okay, but it can't actually be a betrayal, because that would be such a left turn for this character.
It felt weird.
And then whenever the epilogue began, and it was from the point of view of Cayenne, I was like, okay, well, this is where we get the justification for the betrayal and why he actually is a bad guy. Like, we'll learn something important here that makes it make sense. Because not even worrying about like if it made sense or not, I didn't want it to be true. Yeah. Because I had already decided that he was like a good guy or whatever.
You already knew him, and so it'd be weird to...
It seemed evident to me that he was really good. And, I could have been projecting some of that on him throughout the story, but it just seemed... I didn't have any real reason to doubt him until the, left field betrayal. Yeah. But yeah, there definitely were a few things that I didn't expect either. Like you were saying that, there was some stuff that did kind of take you by surprise. There was stuff that took me by surprise too. And I don't know if it was just because I was like so bought into the story and I was just like, nose in the book, just like, not paying attention or really thinking about too much, or...
We called a lot of the book too, because like when we found out that the mom is two, that was like nice, we'll nail it. Because they even felt like they tried to lead us away from that for a second, just for a second, and then it was like, no, here she is, she's two, and then it talked a little bit about like how they were both like impenetrable, like not just immortal,
they explain how their immortality works, which is, I think, probably the most believable way for it to exist in this universe. Because if it was like an elixir, I would have been like, no one cares about that. The real magic is reeling, not alchemy. And, which, I guess, might as well clarify the way that it works in this universe. Her mother says is they found the most powerful Sooth in the realm, and she saw, or the Sooth, he or she, but I don't think it said, what gender it was, and saw a future in which they lived on forever as legends. And so she reeled that mentality of the people into their flesh, which made them inherently immortal legends. IRL.
Yeah, that was cool. And after a while too, they got kind of sick of it, and they were trying to kill themselves, and that's why like she has the cut of her whole head off or whatever, because like they try to decapitate her.
They get sick of what happens to the people, because inadvertently making them immortal also made their ideals immortal, and that's what manifests the original
tenets,
copy of Tenets, which is why it heals itself.
Yeah,
whenever they were like tearing stuff out.
That was cool.
And so like it becomes like the literal definition of a living legend, and so it forces the people to worship it by nature of its like extreme magic.
She did a good job with her magic, I thought, man, because like that tied it all together for the universe. It kind of gave it.
Yeah, it answered several questions that we had all at once. It worked really well, and I was really appreciated.
And it was unique. You know, it made it feel like it was not necessarily a unique form of magic, and then it was like, no, wait, here's why it's unique. And it's like, oh,
right, like at its base, the Sus are just time mages. Like we've seen that before, but the literal mechanics of it are something I've not seen before.
Yeah, the reeling in the manifestation of their like future person,
right?
Like their, like kind of Dorian Graying them, like pulling their like immortality from just like the story. But that was just neat. And dude, like right at the end, it felt like she left it open. I think we were talking about this before the show, but it felt like she left it open for several different avenues. Like it could be another book that carries on either with one character or with three of them. You know, it could be all about Sanjing and Hesina and
we might have split up chapters of them concurrently and stuff like that.
That would make more sense, I think.
Like we jump to Roran and stuff like that. You know, I think, and that was also like what we said last week. The biggest question is: there going to be more? Yeah, because that determines obviously the structure of the story. Yeah, and she didn't go with the safe ending of this can be self-contained. And I have things I can pull from if it's successful enough for me to write another one. This is clearly intended to lead into another story. Yeah, and it would be disappointing if it didn't have another one, because I know it feels like she wants to keep writing in the universe, because she leaves it open for Hesina to go on and become the woman she'd always wanted to be, and then it told us the whole backstory with Cyan taking on the hard part of being the ruler that people need, but that he had to be the hard ruler that brought about change, and he's a Sooth too, so that's he's a Sooth, so you can see all he can see the potential futures, and that was one of the reasons. Also with him, or I guess there's not really, they don't really say if there are if it's like a Doctor Strange thing where he can see all the possibilities, or if he can just see the trajectory right now. Yeah. I guess that doesn't get ever addressed at all, and now the more that I think about it, it doesn't. I think they just probably see the one path that the timeline is currently on. Yeah, because he took his best guess, and then it kind of strayed a little bit based on, because he could never see 100% of what happened. Yeah, he does say for every 100 things that he gets right, he gets one wrong, or every 10 things. I can't remember the number he uses. I want to say it was something crazy like 100. Yeah, it's like, dude, wow, that's pretty good. Because he doesn't see Lillian dying. He doesn't see the explosion in the prison. Dude, that wasn't in his plan. Yeah, Lillian dying too. That was probably for me when I was like, man, how is that this startled me for half a second too. I was like, when that happened, that startled me for a second too. I was like, what? One, it didn't make any sense, and it startled me for the same amount of time it would have startled me if it was happening in a movie. I would have been like, oh my God. And then I would have immediately been in denial, like, no, that doesn't make any sense. That can't be true. We're going to find out, what actually happened or whatever. She was proclaiming herself the murderer. The assassin. The assassin. She just made herself a scapegoat. Yeah, exactly. Because then she would get killed, Cayenne stabs her in the back, and her blood doesn't burn. So then everybody would be like, it wasn't even a Sooth that killed him anyways. Oh my God. And it restores peace to the kingdom, or provides now the opportunity for peace to be restored. And no one would imagine that Cyan would be a Sooth either, because his twin doesn't burn when she bleeds or whatever. So you would think like, oh well, he's probably good. Yeah, it definitely gives him another layer of security on top of him just being excessively careful all the time. Nobody's gonna cut him. Nobody makes me bleed. Right. I knew he was a Sooth like a paragraph into the epilogue.
Oh, really?
Because he bites his lip on accident, or he doesn't bite his lip. He opens his mouth too wide when he talks, and his lips are all cracked and chapped or whatever, and they crack and bleed.
And he smiles,
and he thinks, "Oh, that was careless," and like sucks in the blood really quickly. And I was like, "Oh, he's a fucking Sooth." That's the only reason it matters that he didn't want to show his blood.
Yeah, I was wondering.
And then like 2 paragraphs after that, it tells us that he's a Sooth. So it wasn't even like I was predicting it for a really long time. Literally 2 paragraphs. But at that moment, I was like, "Oh!" Like suddenly, a lot of things made sense to me.
Yeah. I did kind of like her epilogue. It felt very kind of Watchmen-y,
His epilogue?
The
writer's epilogue. I got you. Okay.
You're right. No, Joan, his epilogue, but it was his epilogue. It was Kayan's epilogue. But
right.
I thought it was cool. It reaffirmed, like you just said, our beliefs of what he was as a character to begin with, and then.
No, continue. But I remembered what I was going to say earlier.
Well, yeah, it just reaffirmed like our beliefs of him as the character to begin with, and then I thought it put like a nice little button on the story if it needed to be self-contained, but it did leave. But the way that she ended Hesina's storyline made it seem like there was obviously going to be another book. Yeah. It just felt like with the epilogue, it kind of put a little button on it just in case. You know what I mean? Like it might not have,
right?
Because that blog is obviously extra. It's so after the story.
Yeah. But even in his plans, after them being diverted, he then continues on to continue planning things because he's really super smart.
Yeah.
Even in those plans, he knows that Hesina is going to leave, and so he's gonna, and that sort of fits into his plans anyways because he was going to have her abdicate her position at one point, and then do all the hard work and then reinstate her. And now that she's been effectively exiled, and she's also effectively self-exiling herself, that fits into her being out of the picture so that he can do all the hard work for the kingdom to, kill the people that need to be killed. And,
he's kind of taking it upon himself to do all this.
Yeah, his goal is to take on all of the heavy bad stuff because the whole thing is that he wants to protect Hesina, and he says, the ultimate cheesy line in his head during the epilogue where he wants to protect her smile, which was like one of the first things that he saw whenever he came back from the brink of death after her father adopted them from the streets or whatever, which was also a prophecy of a Sooth that had been told to him.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying? Sorry.
Yes, but in general, I don't like epilogues like this.
Yeah.
And I did say, I guess, at least half of this idea, that, they just become info dumps of something like that and blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, I assume is an extremely difficult thing to do the thing that I would prefer it to be, but I would prefer all these things to be seated and a little bit more visible throughout the story rather than completely invisible. And here's the answer, because it's an epilogue, it gets to be structurally different from the story, and so therefore doesn't even have to follow the same character. Because the whole story we're in Hesina's head. Yeah. So it would be weird to suddenly jump into Kayan's head unless it's in an epilogue. But, and so generally I think epilogues like this are a lack of being able to seed those things properly.
Definitely, I could see that.
But that's got to be extremely difficult to do.
Oh, definitely.
So even though I don't generally like epilogues like this, I never blame the writer for doing so because I can't imagine how to even start, seeding little things like that cleverly without giving it away.
Yeah, dude, I can barely even think of like a whole storyline. It's easy to pick apart somebody else's that they've worked on, and then try to like make some guesses and be like, okay, I was right about this and this, but I missed this, and it's easy to make our predictions and stuff, but it'd be so hard to write all the intricacies. Like
I could never do it.
Well, dude, honestly, as I was reading and you were predicting some of the things, I was like, man, Will got all these guesses right, like of what the story was. I bet he could write a book. I was literally thinking that today as I was reading the book. Like, man, Will could write.
I wish I had said that I thought maybe the king killed himself because I had thought it. I just brushed that away a little more quickly than the idea that I thought maybe her mom did it, and so I was like, I'm going to use that prediction on the podcast.
And I mean, that was the thing. He was tired of it, right? Like how did he kill himself with that gas release? Jade
his jade medallion could release the poison. Like he could poke a hole in it or what the fuck ever. I don't know. But he knew that would set off Hesina's investigation. Who killed my father, which would lead her to the truth about the inherent evil that's in the kingdom, which is the inherent lack of will of the people because they're bound to the tenants magically.
Yeah.
Which is way more than we thought. We thought they just revered them because the
them.
tenants were like literally their salvation from the relic emperors. But no, they're evidently like magically bound to it.
Yeah.
And so then she can find a way to destroy the tenants. That's why she had to go back and steal it from Joan, because she's like, I need to find a way to destroy this to save the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she was going to be the hope of the people who he loved so dearly and loved like truth and all that, you know, his ideals. Yeah, her mom becomes disenchanted with everything because she realizes what they've done, that they can't fix it. They can't even kill themselves to fix it. And so then she just becomes like the ultimate definition of jaded.
Yeah, that was the main thing too, is like they couldn't figure out how to kill themselves. So did he just put himself in like a permanent coma, or is he actually dead?
Yeah, and that's potentially something that we explore in the next novels.
Yeah, because it seemed like he was still breathing. Because
maybe he's
right?
Like he was breathing.
It just seemed like
there
super
was
coma.
Like more or less blood flow in his body. Just I think they mentioned like he's got color. You know?
Yeah, and I don't think
he's not like just like paste. Yeah. So he's like his body is alive, but he's still dead.
Okay.
I don't know. They didn't spend a ton of time examining it.
They
were literally grave robbing.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
but
as long as
that'll come back at some point. That's got to come back sometime.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the process of saving the kingdom, or maybe even if just Hesina destroys the book. And that also ends her mother's immortality, then we're left to just surmise that her father's immortality is also done, and he can now continue to be a proper corpse in his grave.
Yeah.
So we'll see, and hopefully it doesn't take too long for this is her second published novel, her first American published novel.
Oh, okay.
She had another novel that was published by a different company in Europe. I had read. So. You know, hopefully if this novel is successful enough that affords her the resources to then really start cracking at her next one. Because I assume she has a day job.
Yeah, I would think so too. I don't know. We follow her on Twitter now, and I've been seeing a little bit, but it's just silly little tweets about like Game of Thrones or like a book that she finished reading, or like guess who hasn't taken the time
like a regular
to write
person's
my Goodreads.
tweets. Yeah,
it's like it's just silly. You know, it's silly, fun little stuff that like it's like, oh, she's cool. You know,
she's a person.
It's just like us. She's like us.
Right.
And
but yeah, hopefully if she's not already working on it, I mean, she might be taking a break because it literally did just release.
Yeah.
So even if she had finished writing and editing it 6 months, 8 months ago, she's been going through the publishing process, and I bet that's a nightmare to some degree.
I bet too, man.
So I probably would want to break from it for a little bit as well.
I wonder how much your novels like will change like as time goes on. Like if she had started writing this novel, like say she's writing the second one, say she had started writing it immediately after she had written the first one, but then like the first one didn't get critical acclaim until a couple years down the road. Then she got the resources to but like finish the second one or publish the second one, or it got the acclaim so that everyone wanted the second one. It'd be interesting to see, because like Aragon, he wrote so much, this inheritance saga thing that we read later, he wrote, it seems like years later. And it'd be interesting to see him writing that book maybe right after he finished Inheritance, and if it would have been any different or not.
Right. I think she says at the very beginning of the acknowledgements section is just before she starts literally acknowledging different people and thanking different people for different things. She says that she started writing this story when she was younger than Hesina is.
Yeah, I actually read that at the end. You were saying it. Sorry.
And Hesina's 18, 19?
Mm-hmm. I just came of age, something like that, like 17 or 18, I think.
Yeah, so, and I don't remember, whenever I read like the short like spiel about Joan on Wikipedia or wherever, or whenever I first found like the book and was like, this is a story, blah, 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 from this author, blah, blah, blah. I think she's 25.
I was gonna say she's younger than us,
something like that. She's just a little bit younger than us.
That's cool.
So she's been working on this story for 7 years, 8 years.
That's cool, man.
From beginning to publishing.
That's obviously super hard. Obviously, to write a book and have all.
I wonder if a lot of first books happen that way, though.
Probably creating a universe, getting
certainly for
confidence.
young writers or younger writers, or stories that do get released that were stories that were like a first written story, because you don't have all the time in the world to do it when you're in college, or when you've got like your first few day jobs and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen King, his book on writing that was called On Writing, it was he literally wrote that like you should finish a project in like 2 months. Or at least have a good idea of your project and what you want it to be, you know,
like more or
in
less
2
the
months.
full outline.
Yeah,
I could see that.
If you're working 8 to 5,
if
you
you've
know,
got if
40
that's your
hours a week,
full time job
I
is
think that's
writing,
kind of what he was saying.
That
like,
makes
you know,
sense.
When it's your full time gig, you should have your thing done and at least written and outlined and ready for editing and stuff like in 2 months. Otherwise, you're not.
Certainly, if you want his level of success.
Exactly. And he was kind of saying like, if you're not doing that, you're not like. You could be doing a lot. He's saying you could be putting more effort in or whatever, you know, and,
right,
and that you're not really like dedicated. Not that you're not dedicated. That's the wrong words to say because it makes it sound like you're giving it half-assed effort. But he's saying like if
ready
you're
for
really,
that level of the grind,
exactly,
maybe.
I think that's probably what.
If you look at it as the grind, then I could see that point of view and believe it.
Yeah, I mean he's obviously one of the most prolific writers, just having so many different books out there that have all, I mean, partially his name and then also just like the mystique of his writing. You know, we read one of his books and we saw how he kind of loops things around in circles. And I don't remember where I was going with that, but it was just, you know, I mean, he cranks them out and just, I think they're.
But according to him,
good,
he's working, you know, a minimum 40 hours a week.
It's a full time. It's not like it's not like he's writing a paper, you know, and he spends a couple hours every now and then.
Right, yeah.
And cranks out his novel. It's a full-time gig. You know, it feels like writing could be easy or whatever as you're reading along and you read a bunch of books, you think like, oh, I could do it. And then it's like, man, it just sounds so hard too. Like it's the same thing with comedy. I feel like, you know, I watch a bunch of stand up and I listen to it and I feel like, oh, I could do it, but there's no way, man. Like I think about like going on stage and I get so much anxiety and I could never go stand up. I could never take all the rejection that they take too. It's just like, man, it's a whole nother beast. And just the fact that she made it through the grind and got one of her books out, even if she didn't necessarily have to do a grind for 7 or 8 books. And then, you know, it took them that long before they published one of them. Yeah, obviously she did the grind, you know, it took her 8 years and she did get her book published. She made it through. So it was just cool. It's cool to see. And she's like a young author too. So that's like,
she potentially has a long future of writing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of weird thinking that, you know, they're authors younger than us coming out with books and stuff like.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's the first time that I realized I was old was when about a year and a half ago, I realized that the people producing my entertainment were younger than me.
That's funny, dude. I mean, because it's not like kids are stupid. I mean, when we were 16,
we had ideas and we thought we were funny or smart or, you know, whatever. And
exactly,
just to varying degrees we were.
Yeah, and I mean, kids. Some kids are fucking so smart too, coming out with like the ideas that they're coming out with. Like this one kid dedicated his life to the problem of his life. He was fucking 14 when he decided to dedicate his life to it, and now he's 18 and he's making the new like wastewater like it's a way that they can pull a bunch of trash out of the ocean through using its natural currents. You know, just kids are smart, and it's just like to think that like it's kind of humbling for me to see. You're right, like people producing our entertainment are now younger than us, and it's like it's kind of humbling to me to like, all right, you know.
Right.
Look at kids these days; they're all so smart. I'm proud of them.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything to help, but just like look at them; they're great.
It is an interesting sort of, you know, perspective shift to come to that realization, because I'm still not at the threshold where I don't immediately assume that someone older than me has more answers than I do.
And
when in fact,
vice versa with younger, that like they obviously
that they have less answers. Yeah,
and exactly, I'm there with you.
Because I'm still like 17 in my mind, and I think that people that are younger than me are literally undeveloped children, and like, people that are older than me are people that have graduated high school and college and have had jobs and life experience, which is still true, but I am now also in that category.
Right, yeah.
And I haven't moved myself to that category. But then, you know, 5 minutes into a conversation with a quote unquote adult, I realize that they are substantially stupider than me in some cases. And then I'm watching Sugar Pine 7, this channel on YouTube, and those kids are like 23.
That's awesome.
And they're so fucking smart and so fucking funny. And they're writing these narratives that I just can't, I didn't see coming sometimes. And, you know, it's incredible to realize that you're an old piece of shit.
Yeah, I liked it. Just, it was cool for me. It is weird thinking, like, putting yourself out of that, like, that thing, like, accepting all ages of creativity. Like, I feel like I would take some, just like how we're reading George R. R. Martin, we're watching Game of Thrones from an old man, George R. R. Martin, who has years and years of reading experience and history and all this stuff.
Right, yeah, like a true master of his craft.
Exactly.
Through experience.
And then we're also reading Joan Hughes' debut, you know, like, and we're appreciating both of them to a whole different degree. It's really, it's cool. I like it. I like that we're not like stuck up thinking like only like oldies are goodies, you know, and we're able to, you know, because I'd read a book by a 14-year-old if it came out and it was like, even, you know, they're underdeveloped in some ways. Like obviously Aragon, when he was 16, he wrote that and it was underdeveloped in romance ways. I felt like, you know, in some of the developmental characters and relationships with the girl, you know, it felt like, okay, maybe he hasn't had a relationship with many women or a woman yet, or, you know, so maybe he doesn't know this. It just felt a little awkward sometimes, you know, and so, you know, that might be more developed in other ways. I don't really know where I was going with that, but it's interesting. I like to think that we're super open-minded, and I feel like this is kind of proof in the, you know, pudding. You know, it's you know, we're reading and we're trying to expose ourselves to everything, even new young stories and ideas and stuff.
Right.
And like we were saying, this one was pretty unique. It had magic in ways we never thought, and characters doing things that we thought we saw coming, and, you know, they filled their stories up, and I liked it. Then honestly, because of this book, we followed Joan on Twitter, and then she said that she just finished a book, and that was the book that I was going to bring to the table this week for our.
Oh yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
And I don't know if you want to do that now, but I feel like.
Yeah, we should probably. Yeah, let's look at that. So for our next book, we'll go with Jordan's suggestion of Joan's suggestion of Scythe, of the. Let me pull it back up here real quick. Actually, I don't know why I closed it. I'm so stupid for doing so. Oh, I can just look at it here.
Yeah, from what we were able to gather, it looked like it was like a kind of modern sci-fi kind of sort of novel, based in like a futuristic world where, like, you know, common death by disease is not common anymore, you know, and the only way people died, I think, is by decision. So the Scythe was kind of putting them to the decision of like, do you live or die? And then they have like the Scythe squad that comes through and
the Scythe squad
and make sure.
That's the squad I want to be on.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at the fucking author's name. Kindle wouldn't give it to me super quickly. Something Schusterman. It's going to be Scythe Part 1 of the Arc of a Scythe series.
Yeah.
I guess. By Neil Schusterman. And what we're going to read for this week is going to be parts 1 and 2. So stop when you get to part 3. It's about 175 pages. Give or take whatever edition is that you buy.
Yeah.
We think that we're going to cut this into 3 episodes in total. We're going to read part 1 and 2, then we're going to read part 3, and then we're going to read parts 4 and 5. That's the most even way to break it up, it seems like, from just looking at the table of contents.
Yeah, looks good.
So, read parts 1 and 2, watch Game of Thrones, watch the NHL and NBA playoffs, and we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah.
I'm Will Hedrick.
I'm Jordan Chapper.
This is Dog Ears and Timestamps. Congratulations to the Bruins for making it to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2013. And go Rockets. Hopefully they don't get destroyed in fucking Golden State. Books to read. This is how I Google. I'm not very good at it. Here are 10 books to add to your summer 2019 reading list. I suddenly don't want to read this list. I went to the webpage, and the name of the website is Hype Bay.
Hype Bay?
Like B-A-E Bay.
Oh. Hype Bay.
And the web URL is hypebay.com/2019/5/summer 2019 reading list books, mental health, fashion, feminism. Fuck this website.
Yeah, no thank you.
What my mother and I don't talk about. Girl, woman, other. Furious Hours, Murder, Fraud, and the Last Trial of Harper Lee. Juliet the Maniac. Oh, fuck you. I'm not going to subscribe to your website. Get out of here.
Shit, dude.
Mark Jacobs Illustrated. Guess what I definitely don't want to fucking read.